On June 24th, 1812, Napoleon invades the Russian Empire to secure their position in the continental system to block trade with the UK. 4 days later, however, on June 28th, 1812, as he's advancing just barely onto Russia with a force of 600,000 troops, something strange starts to happen. One day, those who have died suddenly begin to rise. The public, for the most part, is unaware of the blight, or otherwise known as the virus, but they'd soon come to fear the blight that would consume them. A group of survivors from Sweden, Norway, and Russia bunker in as these zombies begin to attack. Napoleon's invasion into Russia at this point would have been reversed, but it is unknown where Napoleon currently is at the time. But for now, that is not our concern. These soldiers in Norway are armed with several sabers, guns, and engineering equipment, and are able to successfully fire a rocket to signal a nearby vessel, and through the snowstorm are able to turn on the lighthouse, alerting the HMS Undead, the vessel mentioned, who come to their aid and rescue them. I'm going to note it now so that I don't forget, but it is important to note that the HMS Undaunted has some significance within our own history, as it's the ship that actually took Napoleon into his first exile on the island of Elba in 1814. So that's pretty neat. Anyway, after they are rescued, they seemingly get transported away to an unknown fate. But something's for sure. These people have seen something that very few have lived to tell the tale of, and that is more so going to occur with the rest of the survivors in this tale, especially regarding Between July 8th to the 8th of September of 1813, the siege of San Sebastian begins, and during it, some British and Portuguese soldiers are taken prisoner by the French on the fortress. However, the enemies are neither Portuguese nor the British, as throughout the night, the French begin to realize that the empire of the undead has risen, and out of desperation, the French garrison on the fortress decides to allow the prisoners to be armed and recruited in a temporary truce against their real threat being the zombies. They make their way through the crumbling fortress and reach a hole in the wall. Later, there's a sound of a rocket going off, and a man named Barry appears, who is a soldier of the 5th Regiment of Foot, who arrives as he's the last of his regiment. He's helpful as he pulls up the wooden platform to the survivors near the hole, so that way they can be lowered and be saved. However, as he's lowering it down, he's killed off, leading to someone having to sacrifice themselves to pull the platform down. With Barry's help shooting the rocket, he did end up alerting a nearby vessel to the location of the survivors, and with his help beginning to lower the platform, the survivors are able to be lowered onto the land where they have to wait for a small little ship to arrive. And where's this small little ship coming from? The HMS Undaunted. That's right, it makes an appearance again. The survivors escape through a little ship, like I said, and as they approach the HMS Undaunted and get on it, the British and the French troops part ways. But while on the ship, one of the survivors succumbs to the infection, and the ship becomes overrun, having killed the captain. The crew and the remaining soldiers decide to land off the coast of Spain, wherein their allies, the Spanish guerrillas, assist them by getting them along the countryside, where populations are sparse and zombies are presumed to be few. Once more, the soldiers' fates are unknown, but again, more people are beginning to survive the infection and spreading the news more and more. It's also here where we actually get our first note in the whole story from someone who was here before us. It's from Jonathan Baker, and it reads, "A few rankers passed off of consumption this morning. Perhaps they were slumbering, but they woke with a bloodlust. A poor chap got a better look at the two, and they lunged at him and ripped his throat out. Couldn't tell you what happened afterwards, but more and more men became afflicted with this bloodlust. The streets are teeming with man-eating cannibals. Our officer has held us up in a house To the naval frigates outside of San Sebastian, please organize an extraction effort. We've taken devastating losses and we're in no condition to confront the French, let alone are the French in any condition to contest the cannibals roaming in the streets. However, I fear the best course of action is to bombard these savages until they can do no harm. To any civilian who's discovered with this letter, deliver these to any of the Majesty's soldiers. This first note is found in a shattered bottle, which was intended to be thrown into the sea behind a large pile of crates at the bottom of the winch. Jonathan Baker is found dead, but his second note is simply written being, "Don't bother sending anyone. I got it all figured out." Jonathan tried to get the news out somehow. He tried to get these out to the seas to alert someone, but he's a little too late. He knows what's going on, but just can't tell anyone. Maybe in some form of vengeance for this man, we do end up spreading the news and tell others of what's to come, but we'll hold off on that for now. Leipzig, Germany is our next map, and between October 16th to 19th of 1813, the coalition forces consisting of Sweden, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, as well as Portugal, are battling the French forces in Leipzig until they encounter the infection. Realizing their forces are not going to be able to game end the other and the zombies, they make a truce and decide to battle the zombies to escape the burning city in a retreat. Because of the actions by the men who fought in this battle against the zombie empire, the major powers signed a ceasefire. But news takes a while to be communicated, especially the news of the heroism of these men. Much more in the zombie apocalypse, so as messed up as it is, it does reveal that up to this point, history has been going exactly as in our timeline since 1 year after the infection began. As just now, the leaders of Europe are beginning to realize the actual threat that the zombies pose. Also, a bit of a side tangent, some French guy named Jacob just blows himself up as the survivors escape, which I just found to be really funny. His death is pointless, but I think it's funny. And also that point about there still being a war going on, despite the whole zombie infection, yeah, that leads up to... Between December 1813 and January 1914, which would still be around a year and a half since the zombie outbreak began, and the German people, knowing that there's a blighter running around, well, they begin to start having a mass panic and hysteria. With panicked civilians thinking it was a genius idea to put a bunch of people in the cellar of the Pfalzgrafenstein castle and just kind of leaving them there. Oh gee, I wonder what that's gonna do. Field Marshal Blücher and soldiers from the Prussian army, and one Russian battalion and some Bavarian soldiers, because why not, arrive in Cub because they got Napoleon on the run and they want to catch him. Realizing that for the most part the castle and the nearby town is mostly empty, save for all the zombies. How strange. They begin to loot the castle of supplies, from food to guns to whatever else they can find. But here, Blücher finds the key to the cellar. But not before the whole thing just busts open and wipes most of his army out. The players are then introduced here, and they are known as the German rear guard, with other soldiers being present, such as Austrians and Bavarians. They also decide to just loot the town and attempt to fight the hordes of zombies that are coming at them, reaching the castle and encountering a now infected Blücher, who instructs them to kill the zombies in the cellar and raise the Prussian flag. "Doing it for Prussia," he says. The rear guard does so, not escaping the castle, but securing it And also, during this time, Blücher does turn, and he does kill an officer that was nearby him, meaning that you kind of have to put him out of his misery. And what is this reward for the epic display of heroism? The Prussian army is largely out of action because a bunch of their elite soldiers and generals have just died. A chain of command just collapses. And, oh man, the Prussians really get done dirty here. But hey, at least they got a cool castle, right? We also don't know what happens to the rear guard, considering that the castle being within or nearby the empire of the undead at this point makes it very difficult to defend. So, good job, Prussia. Really performing miracles out here. Paris begins to evacuate everyone that they can, with thousands and potentially even millions leaving Paris. the city falls to ruins as it later lands on the hands of the undead. A small regiment that was originally ordered by a higher commander that tells our French officer Jean-Louis Le Petit Olivier Dubois, and yes, this is his real name, is found stationed at Notre Dame, and upon seeing the players, Jean-Louis Le Petit Olivier Dubois instructs them to defend the bridge so that his regiment can get the last few people out, and that when they can hear the bell toll, a ferryman will pick them up. It's important to note that this evacuation was originally meant for his regiment, but he seemingly sacrifices it for the players, which could imply that he's either very selfless or believes that the barricades might keep him safe, or that he might die and he just doesn't care anymore. Either or, man. But hey, it is confirmed by the developers that this man does survive, so good on him for giving us his spot. Anyway, the players end up defending the bridge, and while they do so, they can end up reading some creepy writings, such as Evacuation of the Elderly and Weak, The Dead Shall Walk the Earth, and the Most Vital Being, Zechariah 14:12. The verse reads as follows: And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. Yeah, this has some massive implications, but it mainly just goes to essentially cement that what's occurring here is indeed coming out of hell, and that everything here has a religious tie to it. Hell, even Jean-Louis Le Petit Olivier Dubois has the John part, and John is originally a male name with Hebrew origins. Hell, even the guy that I mentioned previously in Leipzig, being Jacob, is also someone who has religious origins. So everything's back and kind of tied to Christianity in some way, with the blight also being tied to it, as it is literally hell overrunning Earth. Upon hearing the bell toll, which, like I said, Jean-Louis Le Petit Olivier Dubois promised us we'd hear, a perked up white boy with a little bit of swag transports the team out of the catacombs and into an unknown fate. At least for now, though, they seem to have escaped. The remaining 3 maps that have so far been released all take place very close to one another on June 18th, 1815 in Belgium. They're also all in endless mode, so it implies that no matter how hard you try, the conclusion of every single one of them is that those who are present there will eventually die. La Haye Saint. I'm gonna butcher that, so I'm just not gonna try. La Haye Saint is the first on the chopping block. Here, German, English, and French forces, which mind you are all present throughout all 3 maps, fight the masses of the undead until 8:35 p.m., wherein all are wiped out. This is confirmed in the note of by Von Varen, which states, La Haye Saint has fallen. At 8:35 on June 18th, the French and German-English forces fell to the masses of the undead. From what can be gathered, I believe no man have escaped the grasps of the undead. What's left of our garrison has barricaded the attic. We have little time, and it seems all escape attempts will be futile. We are prepared for the inevitable. To the forces of the Huguenot, best of luck to you, and good day. No one made it, and not even Von Varen, and those who remained could only wish for the best at those at Huguenot. The forces of Huguenot fare no differently, as only a few miles away, they too are consumed by the massive wave of zombies, wiped away one by one. Here there is also a massive lore dump with a newspaper that we will discuss in the second video, but for now, just know that there's a whole lore dump. The final stand in Belgium occurs in Ligny. Though stationed, only 20 men who were heavily undersupplied. It's noted that they only had 3 bags of flour, 40 bottles of juice, and 5 bags of bread loaves. Eventually, cut off from supply and running out of them already, these men too would fall. From what can be gathered from these stories, the story of Guts and Black Powder is a collection of tales from a bunch of different soldiers that all incur the wrath of the dead. From the French to the Prussians to the Russians and etc. Everybody in some way is battling the undead in order to somehow survive it, whilst also, at least up till 1813, battling one another. It is both a story that is sadly showing how the fall of humanity is happening just as it's about to industrialize and rise, especially at least with the technologies of guns and war. But it is also a story of defiance, especially regarding all the soldiers that we play as and see within the story. That's why everything from people dying to being converted right in front of them, everybody is still fighting and giving it a fair shot, uniting all of Europe to battle against the zombie hordes. And ultimately, whilst the story is still being written, the story that we have seen currently is that of defiance, of humanity's defiance to go down. Even against hell, they will continue fighting. And that is the story of Guts and Black Powder. Part 2 is going to mainly consist of the theories and lore, but this is just the main story segment that contained the background information and stuff, so that way you can get into what is going to happen by part 2. But as for now, I am tophat-king. Thank you all for watching this part 1, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.